This episode of the Devil State of Mind podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. And what is going on, Devils fans? And I know, again, it has been a while, but it is your host, your best friend, your confidant, your number one source, Neil Villapiano, and welcome to another edition of the Devil State of Mind podcast, right here on the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sports Wire Radio, the best place to get everything you need to know about your New Jersey Devils. And as always, guys, I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are listening to this podcast episode. And thank you guys, as always, for taking time out of your day to check these episodes out. You guys know that I greatly appreciate every single time you guys take time to listen to these episodes. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate it even now. And we are now into early August. We are a little more than a month away from the boys being in training camp, getting ready for the 2024-2025 season. It is going to be an exciting one. I think that there's going to be a lot of excitement that we're going to be talking about throughout the season. And as always, I cannot wait and so much looking forward to giving you guys the best coverage that I can here on the podcast, as well on social media, over on Instagram at Devil State of Mind, and also on Twitter at Devil State. And again, also as usual, make sure you check out the Facebook page and give us a like and a follow over there. Just search Devil State of Mind. Shout out to all of our sponsors down below, as you can see here on YouTube: SeatGeek, DraftKings, Manscaped. You got BetterHelp as well, as I mentioned it right before this episode started. So yeah, we have a couple of signings. One prospect, another player that is kind of semi a prospect, but does have a little bit of experience playing in the NHL. And the Devils did finally re-sign one of their RFA goaltenders. And last but certainly not least, we are going to discuss about Dawson Mercer and what his next contract should look like for the Devils. So as always, guys, we have a bunch to get to here on this edition of the Devil State of Mind podcast. So let's not waste any more time and get rolling. And we will get rolling and drop the puck with talking about the Devils signing their prospect Cam Squires to his 3-year entry-level contract. This happened a couple of weeks ago. Cam Squires was the Devils' 4th-round pick, 122nd overall in the 2023 draft. And he just finished up his 3rd season in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League with the Cape Breton Eagles, in which he led the team with 33 goals, 39 assists, for a very impressive 72 points. He also did lead the team in penalty minutes as well, which I thought was kind of a funny stat. He also contributed 20 points, 9 goals, 11 assists in 14 playoff games this year, also leading the team. So he was definitely a main catalyst for the Eagles this past season, and now he is officially a professional hockey player, and it is very likely he will either start with the Adirondack Thunder or the Utica Comets to begin next year, because, and I've talked about this in the past, when you look at this Devils team right now, let's be honest, there really isn't going to be any rookie that makes the team out of camp unless we get some injuries, knock on wood, or somebody really, really, really stands out and puts the Devils in a position where they have no choice but to bring somebody in. But nonetheless, I think that it's more likely that we won't see any really newcomer, brand new players in terms of guys who have never played in the league before getting onto this team. Also looking at Squires a little bit, he has told 170 career points in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, 79 goals, 91 points, and 117 penalty minutes in 197 regular season games in the 3 years with the Cape Breton Eagles. So the Devils once again locking down another one of their prospects. Cam Squires also had a really, really strong development camp. He was one of the guys that really, really stood out in terms of him developing his speed, getting his offense going a little bit more. I think the one knock, as I've already mentioned here, is to obviously try to stay out of the penalty box moving forward as much as he can. And so now for Cam Squires, it's the next step for him. The next step now is to get ready to play your first season of professional hockey. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Kevin Dineen, because again, I think, hearing from Dan McKinnon, the assistant GM of the Devils and also the GM of the Utica Comets, it seems like that Squires is going to get a really good, legitimate chance to make the Utica Comets and start there in the AHL, which is great because for him, it obviously means he's one step away from the NHL. And it's really interesting when you are looking at a team that is in a position to win now, right? To go and compete for the playoffs, compete for Stanley Cups, yet they're still, continuing to stay young, sign these guys. And look, you're not going to sign every draft pick that you get. This is just honest. But when somebody gets signed, immediately I start to think of what are the things that stand out? Why does so and so get an ELC where this other guy maybe he doesn't? And I think Cam Squires, what he embodies is really honestly what Tom Fitzgerald and also Sheldon Keefe want out of their forwards. Guys that can play a good 200-foot game, can do a little bit on both sides of the ice and really kind of contribute in all different ways. So that's the way that I look at Cam Squires. Well deserved ELC. So it will begin this year and it will be done at the end of the 2026-27 season. And, we'll see if by that time he ends up with the team, maybe sooner rather than later. But again, Devils signed Cam Squires, their prospect forward, their fourth round pick in 2023 to his ELC. It is a 3-year deal of just under, I believe, $900,000 AAV. So the next signing that the Devils worked on is the Devils kind of have made a lot of, I don't want to say minor signings, but certainly a lot of the big moves that we've all expected and everything, as we know, is pretty much done. And what the Devils have in terms of on paper is what we're going to get when the season started. But the Devils did re-sign another RFA that has definitely positively surprised a lot of people over the last 365 days. I can go back to last year's development camp where he really started to stand out, and he had experience playing in the NHL a little bit this year, and the Devils are able to keep him around as they sign defenseman Sant Hada to a 1-year, 2-way contract worth $775,000 at the NHL level and $125,000 with $150,000 guaranteed at the AHL level. So Hada, who's 23 years of age, he made his debut back in late January of this past season against the Vegas Golden Knights. Ended up playing a total of 12 games with the Devils this past year. He's 6'1", 190 pounds. He got his first point in the NHL a couple of days. It wasn't that long. It was, I think, less than a week. He got his first NHL point on an assist against the Tampa Bay Lightning. He ended up getting 2 assists in that game, in total 2 assists in the NHL this past year. He averaged 14 minutes and 39 seconds on ice and recorded a plus minus of 5 for his mark. And really what stood out to me with Hada is the fact that he looked so comfortable right away. He very much looked like he belonged. He was very responsible as a defensive end. He actually did a good job of a lot of breakout passes. I felt overall he just seemed like that he knew exactly what he needed to do in each game. And when you look at the struggles of the Devils back end last year with the inexperience and the injuries and everything, it was nice to see one of the young guys here really kind of come in that we didn't expect. And if you remember, Hada was part of that big Timo Meier trade back in the, less than 2 years ago. And again, it's so funny how the Devils seem to be getting even more beneficial from that Timo Meier trade. Not just with Timo Meier, but now Hada as well. And speaking to James Nichols of NJ of New Jersey hockey, um, when I spoke to him, he was a big fan of him, and he's written about him numerous times. And he really, really, again, just played well in the very little time that he's had in the NHL. Is this a guy that's going to be in the NHL this year? I think there is a chance, but I think when also you look at a lot of the moves, even for just depth defensemen that Tom Fitzgerald made, and you can see how Hanukkah doesn't really have that big frame yet. I think that there's a good chance we're going to see him a lot more down in Utica. But you never know. Again, with injuries and everything like that, there's always the possibility that he gets an opportunity at some point. He also played 48 games this past year with the Utica Comets, and he ended up with 20 points. A pretty solid season for him, 5 goals, 15 assists, and his goal and assist totals, along with his 32 penalty minutes, all were single season career highs at the AHL level for him. And also, his 5 goals led all Utica Comets defensemen in 2023-24. So, this is a guy who is starting to become yet another product of the Devils' really good development of young defensemen, and a guy that obviously was not going to cost that much. If you look again, $775,000, which, to put it for some people, you could even argue that maybe that's like the veterans minimum equivalent in the NBA kind of thing. This is a guy that is a low risk, high reward. He's developed very well, and I think he's going to get a lot of action. He's going to be one of the top defensemen for the Utica Comets. But if the Devils do need him to come up and play in New Jersey, I think there's going to be a lot of comfortability with him coming there, especially from Fitzgerald's perspective. It'll be interesting to see what Sheldon Keefe thinks of him once he gets an opportunity to see him. And look, I'm sure Sheldon Keefe throughout this entire offseason has looked at all of these players, looked at game tape. But again, you can only look at game tape for so long. And, it's much more important to actually see these guys on the ice once training camp begins. I fully expect Hanukkah to be one of the guys that's going to be, at training camp. That's maybe a little bit more of a long shot, but a guy that if he can play well and really produce, then he's probably going to get a shot with the Devils to start this year, which I'm sure would be a big step forward for him in his development. But if he ends up in Utica, I don't think it's a big loss either. So the Devils continuing to keep their defensive defensive prospect pool, and just defense as a whole strong as they re-signed Santeri Hadaka to a 1-year contract, $775,000. So I believe he will be a UFA at the end of next season. And again, he's only 23 years of age, still has a lot of time to develop for sure. Now, the last signing that happened, and it's so interesting because last week I published my first article for Pucks and Pitchforks talking about Isaac Poulter being a diamond in the rough in terms of goaltending. And I highly recommend you guys go check that out over on Pucks and Pitchforks. And I'll leave a link for the article as well in the description here on YouTube. But the same day that Isaac Poulter article came out, there was another Devils goalie signing that the Devils decided to finalize, and it's a good one, as the Devils re-signed Nico Dawes to a 2-year contract at an AAV of $812,500. And so here's the contract breakdown for these 2 years. So this upcoming season, it is a two-way deal, $775,000 at the NHL level and $350,000 at the AHL level. And then next season, 25-26, it'll be just a one-way deal at $850,000 at the NHL level. Now, why is that important? Because of 2 reasons. One, for this season, you obviously don't want to lose Nico Dawes on waivers because he's already shown potential to be a really, really good goaltender for the Devils long term. No question about it. So this just makes it easy. I'll give you 3 reasons. Number 2, look, it's obviously, as we've very well experienced here in New Jersey with goalies getting hurt and being out, Nico Dawes is somebody that we have relied on over the last couple of years to come in and play some relief while other guys get healthy, or we continue to try to improve, in front of our goaltenders. And so this just makes it easy to kind of go back and forth and be kind of like basically be the third string goaltender on this team. What makes it really interesting is the third reason, and that involves the 25-26 season. It is a one-way deal. I think that the Devils feel very confident that they are going to have a young goaltender, most likely Nico Dawes, to back up Jacob Markstrom going into 25-26. Is it always possible that Jake Allen could be back after this year? For sure. But I think the Devils know that they want to give Nico Dawes the opportunity to be the long-term solution in net. And I think him, along with potentially a guy like Isaac Poulter, could be that long-term young goaltending duo that the Devils have needed. And, Nico Dawes, I think his, trajectory in terms of how he's developed, I think he's done pretty well. He's been put in some pretty tough situations when it comes to not a lot of support, kind of being overworked. I mean, you look at last year with the Devils having guys like Vanacek out and eventually traded, Akira Schmid going up and down, just so much, Jake Allen eventually playing a bunch, Kaapo Kähkönen playing. But there was a point in time where the Devils rode Nico Dawes for about 8 or 9 games. And yeah, there were several games where he was great. I mean, the Stadium Series is the prime example of that. But there were also times where I think he struggled because I think he got fatigued. And it was tough because the Devils were still in a playoff position. I think things would have been different for Dawes in terms of how much he played if the Devils knew much sooner that they were not going to make the playoffs. But Nico Dawes, there were many times where he showed signs of being a really, really good goaltender. There are other times where it showed his inexperience. And we have to remember this as well. He was out until late December with a lower body injury. He had surgery on it and everything, and then played like a day after he got back from surgery, and then still played a bunch this past year. And he definitely caught some eyes around the league with his performances, and again, particularly with that Stadium Series game. Because if you remember, Nico Dawes, he set a new NHL record, making 45 saves on 48 shots, the most saves by a goaltender in an NHL outdoor game in that Devils 6-3 win over the Flyers in the Stadium Series. The 48 shots that he faced, which was not great, against were also the most all-time an NHL netminder has faced. So he set some really, really good and maybe some not so good records in that performance. But that shows you again the talents that Nico Dawes has and the excitement that he could definitely bring long term if continued to develop properly. Nico Dawes played 21 games this past year in New Jersey, posting a 9-11-0 record. And if you could believe this, him still being incredibly young, he has still played almost 40 games, or actually just over 40 games. He has a 19-22-1 record overall with a 3.13 goals against average and a .894 save percentage. And again, he's been put into some tough situations with the defense being lax, sometimes not getting enough goal support, and basically being forced to carry the team. And there were times where he just struggled because he was getting worn out. And that was going to happen. So looking at that goals against average and save percentage, not great. But at the same time, if he gets better help and just more help in general, both the goals against average will go down and the save percentage will go up. And that's what we want to constantly see when we look at our goaltenders. And of course, the win-loss record is going to get better. But what I'm happy about is the fact that Nico Dawes is going to get a full year, again, he's going to be healthy when training camp starts, full healthy year, and be the number one guy in Utica, especially now with Akira Schmid off to Vegas and playing now with the team in Henderson, the AHL affiliate of the Golden Knights. But this will be Nico Dawes, net. I fully believe that for Utica going into next season, it's a really good opportunity for him to have a full year to develop. I think the Devils hope that they don't have to bring up Dawes at any point next season. But over an 82-game season, things can go wrong, especially with injuries and poor play and all that stuff. And hopefully we could go through a year where we're fairly healthy like we were 2 years ago. And, we have a stable goaltending where we don't have to have that be a question mark going into every game. But again, Fitzgerald continuing to keep these key guys around, these key young guys that can help this team in the long run, and especially with the goaltending as the Devils re-signed Nico Dawes to a 2-year contract at just over not just over, but at $812,500. And lastly here, guys, I want to talk, and this is the main subject that I wanted to talk about in this episode. We got to talk about the Devils' biggest RFA still there, and that is Dawson Mercer. Now, right off the bat with Dawson Mercer, I will say this. The Devils gave him a qualifying offer. He has a contract going into next season, regardless. This is not something where the Devils have to rush this. Also, this is not like what we saw with contract negotiations with guys like Timo Meier or even Jesper Bratt. I think that there is going to be, and I'm sure Fitzgerald has talked a bunch with Mercer and his agent. I think that there is a very, very good chance that within this month, the Devils will have him signed to a longer deal, whether that's a long term deal or a bridge deal. And I think that's the first question you ask. You say, do you sign him to a long-term contract, 5, 6, 7 year contract, like you've done with guys like Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, as mentioned before, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meier, Dougie Hamilton. You get the point. Or do you sign him to a bridge year, a 2, 3-ish year deal where it's a little bit, obviously he's getting paid more than he's getting paid now, and it's more of a proven contract for him to prove that he is going to continue to develop, get better and better and better, so that he can cash in on a much more lucrative contract in the next couple of years when the cap is up more, and maybe it's even more favorable for the Devils and for Mercer. Again, also all signs are pointing to Mercer getting a contract signed before this season starts. If nothing else, he will probably accept this qualifying offer and the Devils move on from there. Let's look at Dawson Mercer, shall we? Let's look at what he's done. He's 22 years of age. Let's start with that. He has played in 246 games so far in his NHL career through 3 seasons, 64 goals, 67 assists for 131 points so far in his young career. And again, he has yet, knock on wood, yet to miss a game. He has played in every single game he could possibly play, and that includes the playoffs. This is a guy that is the definition of accountability. As the old saying goes, the best type of accountability is availability, or the best type of ability is availability. Regardless of what you may think of Dawson Mercer, he is constantly in the lineup. He is constantly there, available to be in any position that he's been, whether being on the top 6, on the bottom 6, playing on the wing, being a center. It does not matter. He is a Swiss Army knife type player. He can do just about anything. And there are times where he really, really does it well. And yeah, he's coming off a down year. He basically got the sophomore slump a year later, which is kind of interesting when you really look at it. Because I think if you look at the first 2 years, he really just went straight up. This past year, he kind of went down a little bit, but that's a great opportunity for him to step it up even more this year with a new coach now in Sheldon Keefe. Probably a fairly favorable system in terms of, offensive capability. But again, Mercer is reliable on both ends of the ice. Should also mention, Dawson Mercer has already played in 12 career playoff games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. And he does have that top 6 talent. And as some other guys get a little bit older, he will probably get more action in that top 6. And I've talked about it before, especially with Jack Hughes not being the best guy when it comes to faceoffs. Dawson Mercer is somebody that could maybe play on that side in that center position alongside a guy like Jack Hughes to be good in faceoffs, especially in the defensive end. I wouldn't even be surprised if Dawson Mercer maybe gets a look on the penalty kill, where the Devils keep some offense on there, but also with a really, really good faceoff guy as well. So that's kind of the way I look at it. And I think it makes a lot more sense for the Devils to go with a bridge deal for Dawson Mercer just for now. And there are 2 very, very recent bridge deals that happened that could be really, really good ways for Tom Fitzgerald to do a comparable. We'll start with Shane Pinto from the Ottawa Senators. He signed a 2-year, $7.5 million deal with the Senators. That is a bridge deal. Also, just recently, Kirill Marchenko of the Columbus Blue Jackets, a 3-year, $3.85 million deal. So for Marchenko, he gets a little bit more of a longer-term deal at less AAV. I would like to hope that I would rather see the Devils give Mercer, and obviously he signed a contract similar to Marchenko, where he's not getting as much AAV, but he's getting an extra year of just, comfortability, an extra year of, control. And I think that would be good for Tom Fitzgerald as well. And we know Fitz enough to know that he's very good at persuading guys to take a little bit less money in order to keep, as he loves to have, a healthy cap. And that's kind of the way that I look at it from there. And I think it is very likely he ends up signing a bridge deal with the Devils. And again, like I said before, I think that there's a good chance that he ends up signing it within the next month. And again, if they can get him to a 3-year deal at under 4, I think that's honestly, again, some really good business from Tommy Fitz. But let me know what you guys think about it. Do you agree with that type of thinking? Do you think he should just get a long-term contract and then we just don't have to worry about it? If you want a bridge deal, what do you think? I would love for you guys to let me know in the comment section. And again, over on social media at Devil State of Mind on Twitter, on Instagram, excuse me, and also on at Devil State over on Twitter. And again, make sure to check us out on Facebook as well. But yeah, again, things kind of slow right now, but you know what? We are into August. We are getting to the end of the summer. We're starting to get, the weather's getting a little bit colder, especially here in New Jersey. And hockey season is just right around the corner. And it won't be long before we see our boys in the red and black take the ice at the RWJ Barnabas practice facility and getting ready for the 2024-25 season. You know what's the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only like 2 days the whole year without a game. 2. And with so much happening and so much action, you already know that just makes every game day so great at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. And to focus on more simplicity, one thing that I really love is just honestly either betting the over or under in terms of points or whatever the case may be, or as mentioned before, to just pick a winner or loser. It is a simple, fun way to get yourself started with some awesome sports betting. And if you are new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers, you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, visit www.100gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gambling resources at dkng.com/base.